everyone for joining today. Today we're going to be kind of talking about settlement at Amazon and going over what that process looks like. So if you're new to Amazon, or maybe even not new to Amazon, hopefully we can give you some helpful information about what this process looks like and kind of how it works and how we can help you out here at SupplyPike with this process. So just to kind of introduce us, my name is Abby. I'm going to be the host of this webinar. I am a customer success manager here at SupplyPike. So I help our customers get onboarded, do their training, and then make sure they feel confident and actually see success using our software. We've also got Ash on here, who is our product owner for Amazon. Ash, did you want to give a little introduction about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. As Abby said, my name is Ash. I've been at SupplyPike for about a year, and I am the product owner, product manager for our Amazon solution. Helped lead the effort to bring it into, or to create the solution, and then now working on the maintenance and growing the product to include more delightful features for our customers.
Perfect. Thanks, Ash.
Yeah.
All right, and then our agenda for today. So once we get through kind of these rest of our introductions, then we'll go through the life of an Amazon shortage claim, which is what Ash is going to talk through. And then we will have time for your questions at the end, or Ash, I might pause you kind of throughout if I think one of the questions is timely.
Absolutely.
We will be able to answer your questions, and if for some reason we don't get to your question by the end, then we will follow up with you via email. And then just kind of some housekeeping FAQs here. We will send out a copy of this slide deck, as well as the recording within 3 to 4 business days. And then for any questions that you do have, you can either ask them in the chat like you have been, and you should also have access to a Q&A feature within Zoom. So you can use either one of those and we will answer your question. All right. That pretty much wraps up my portion. So Ash, I'll go ahead and kick it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Abby. And thank you all for joining today's webinar. Before we get into settlement related stuff, I think some important background and context would be to discuss the life cycle of an Amazon shortage claim. And so starting maybe with a comparison of timelines between major retailers. Walmart, you have up to 2 years to go back to a shortage code and dispute those. Target is about 18 months. Kroger, 180 days, and I believe only deductions over $100 are disputable. And then finally for Amazon, we have it at 30 to 40 days, but that comes with a little caveat and context. So as far as timelines go, Amazon doesn't have a set timeline, meaning, oh, if something is older than 2 years, then you can't go after it or it expires. If a shortage is created and still hasn't been either canceled or reversed to you, then it'll live for as long as it could. The reason we say 30 to 40 days is once you're past that 40-day mark after an invoice's due date, which is usually when a shortage becomes confirmed and disputable with Amazon, disputing becomes pretty much automatically denied, at least on that first try. And so our logic or our recommendation is really dispute all your shortage claims within those first 30 days after the invoice's due date or when a shortage becomes confirmed, because that's when you will be able to use your one-time dispute as efficiently and as productively as possible. Otherwise, it really, what we see from mass data analysis is when something is much older than 40 days, Amazon and gets disputed, Amazon will respond between 1 and 3 days, so pretty quickly. However, in 99% of the cases, it's an automated denial. And then when you dispute within the first 30 days, that's when your chances are at the highest in terms of you recovering all or at least some of that money back through that dispute and get dollars approved. And then those chances usually get cut in half or 67%. So you lose about half or 2/3 of your chances on that 30 to 40 days. And so, but then after 40 days, it drops basically to 1%. And in many cases, we see it really at 0% based on historical data. So yeah, that's basically what these windows or what the Amazon window represents as far as shortage claims go. Abby, did you get any questions relevant to this that I might answer before going on to the next slide?
Not yet.
All right. In terms of the life of the Amazon shortage claim that we went through just now, you can tell based on the previous slide that it's pretty narrow, based on just a mere comparison to the other 3 retailers. So our recommendation usually is, as far as shortages go, the first round of disputing is heavily like a heavily automated process from Amazon's end. So usually we say if you can get your proof and documents together, at least when using our app, then before a shortage matures and goes beyond that 30-day period, then it's fine if you want to get your ducks in a row and share all the proof with Amazon initially. Otherwise, if you can't, then timeliness takes precedence. So disputing early, even without proof, has higher return rates than disputing with any type of proof document.
Ash, we got a question in the chat. Could you talk a little bit more about why Amazon pays invoices in full and then takes the shortage claims and then repays it again multiple times?
Yeah, so Amazon, that's more from an Amazon accounting perspective. So every time they create an SCR on the payment data, they make it look like they paid it in full and created a new shortage, but technically it's just that they paid you less than what you were owed. So usually if you went to your to any payment number on Vendor Central and their remittance, you might see like an invoice being paid the amount in full, but then if a shortage was created, an invoice number plus SC in the invoice number would follow that within the payment line items, and that one will have a negative amount for however much was actually deducted from the payment. So it is just very confusing accounting from how that remittance page is built, but technically they don't actually pay the full amount since their payment line items can have negative amounts as well as positive amounts. And I'm sure you've experienced, if you've gone to that remittance page, you've seen a lot of payment numbers, which are sort of Amazon's version of a check number with payment amounts or total payment amounts of 0. That's usually when they match positive amounts that they were supposed to pay you to negative amounts they took away either through a shortage or even things like co-ops or provisionals. So yeah, their accounting system is odd, but one of the things that we do in our app is we try to simplify it by actually showing you, okay, this is how much was paid on that invoice actually, and not just because if we just take the positive line item, then we're not giving you the full story of that negative amount that was taken out of it. Hopefully that answers the question, but if you have follow-ups, I'm sure we can get to those. And yeah, 30 days after the invoice due date, as I mentioned, are really key. Probably the most important factor when it comes to disputing your your shortage claims. When you dispute something that we consider mature, which is something that's older than 40 days after the invoice due date, as we said, probably have less than 1% chance of recovering any dollars at all. And so really disputing early allows you to use that one-time dispute, which is the fastest, which gets the fastest response as efficiently as possible, because you don't want to dispute something just to get a denial 2 or 3 days later. So we try to emphasize that. And then this is a graphic that some of you may be familiar with. It's Amazon's sort of timeline for Smart Match. One of the questions that we usually get when we tell people about the timeliness of shortage disputing is how Amazon has a Smart Match process. So what that means is that, and you've probably seen it just by looking at your invoices, is they create a shortage invoice, and then a few days later, or a few weeks later, they reverse some of it and create a new shortage invoice, which would have like SCR, SCR. And then a few days or a few weeks after that, get some reversal, and the SCR, SCR, SCR gets created. I know we've seen some crazy invoice hierarchies with like 16 SCRs. And so going back to how that may conflict or raise some questions as far as our recommendation regarding timeliness, is Amazon claims that they smart match up to 35 days after the invoice due date. However, that seems to be completely wrong, because that smart match, and I'm sure you can find examples in all of your accounts, can happen even up to 6-7 months after that. So, and the reason for that is it's a very passive and automated process. Whenever a product or a carton is scanned that wasn't initially scanned and paid for, Amazon system will automatically flag it as unpaid and start processing a shortage claim reversal, which is what that SCR stands for. And so Amazon will usually recommend that you wait those 35 days before to allow for smart match to take place. But what we see is from the data and from our experiences, smart match takes place regardless of you disputing or not, since it's a passive process. They're not actively looking for those missing cases. However, disputing when done early and within that optimal time window triggers a more active process of looking for those missing cases. And so what we say is get the best of both worlds. So dispute early, make or increase or optimize your chances of getting at least a partial approval on those disputes. And then the rest can be, if a smart match was going to happen, it will happen regardless. And it'll usually happen way beyond or after that 35-day period that Amazon claims. Usually, yes, the frequency decreases as an invoice grows older, which just makes sense from even a logistical standpoint. However, it's not the most important thing. And then for any remaining dollars out there, that you didn't recover through disputing or smart match, settlement is usually the way to go. And we will get into that here in a little bit. So we already went through this a little bit, but basically the first 30 days after an invoice due date is the prime or optimal time window for disputing those shortages. And in fact, looking at our data across a large number of customers and accounts that we have, 99% of all approved dollars on shortages all come from disputes that were done in that optimal time window. So it's a pretty significant pattern right there as far as like data is concerned or metadata is concerned. And then usually what we see is that it's not it is a sharp decline, but it doesn't go directly to 0 or 1% after that 30-day mark. Usually the 10 days after that, so 31 to 39 or 40 days, usually it starts declining over time until it reaches that 40-day mark, and then it sort of flattens down. And you could probably download your own data and sort of do some pivot tables on Excel and get like a graph just like that, just like that one, based on your own supplier data. So that's pretty much a nice way of wrapping up or summing up what we mean by timeliness. And so the way we see it is within those first 30 days, that's what we call the optimal time window. So we usually tag those shortages as optimal for disputing. The 30 to 40-day period, so those 10 days that after the 30-day period, we consider a shortage to be maturing. So you better act on it real quick. Your chances probably already decreased pretty significantly, but waiting any longer just completely evaporates any chances you've had. And then 40 plus days, really it's considered untimely, or the shortage is tagged as mature. And our platform has messaging telling you that basically, as far as those mature shortages go, we do recommend disputing them still, because if you wanted to go through settlement or raise a shortage claim case to the Amazon support team, they don't allow you to go through that reconciliation process without having a dispute ID linked to every shortage that you raise to them. So in a sense, the disputing on those is for a different purpose. You have less than 1% chance of recovering that money back. For the vast majority of mature shortages, you're trying to get a dispute ID linked to it, so you can then create a case with Amazon support and their FinOps team in order to negotiate and recover that money back. All right, so which is a pretty good segue into the settlement process. First of all, a little bit of a caveat going into that timeliness and transitioning from that to settlement is when we say those first 30 days are the optimal window for disputing, it doesn't mean that every optimal shortage will be fully approved or even partially approved. It just means that your rate of approval for disputes made within that window will be significantly higher than the other windows we've discussed, whether it's the maturing window or definitely the mature or untimely window. That being said, any dollars that were denied from that first round of disputing with Amazon will either be reversed after that denial, which we see through smart match. So again, through that passive process, months later, Amazon stumbles upon a carton that they hadn't paid for and then reverses that amount, and then you're all set as far as that deduction is concerned. And then the other potential solution or resolution or endpoint would be if Amazon cancels that shortage. So a big reason for that is usually, well, other than having you submitting a credit memo, so taking ownership of that shortage and saying, yes, Amazon, that shortage is valid, here's a credit memo, and you can cancel the invoice or the shortage invoice. Usually Amazon could cancel it, and that's usually when they are 100% sure that that shortage is valid, or that shortage is actually an overbilling instance. So meaning they had originally ordered 100 cases, 100 units of product A, and then before you fulfilling the PO, they had canceled 50, but you went and invoiced for the full 100 that was originally ordered and didn't adapt your invoice to the new quantities requested. And so you may have overbilled it. And so what that is usually a separate issue than, say, a shortage. Usually, if you actually ship the full 100, then you'll have to talk returns or getting those additional 50 units counted and paid for as part of a different invoice. But usually Amazon cancels it because it's technically not a shortage, and that's one of the main instances where that can happen. Obviously, there are other cases, but we won't go through all of those. And then, yeah, so once you go through your first round of disputing, if you get fully approved, then that's all good. You got all your money back and the case is closed. If you got denied fully or partially and then paid back through smart match, then same thing, case closed, and you recovered all of the money that was originally withheld. And then the last scenario is you disputed, got denied fully or partially approved, which means partially denied as well. And those dollars are still out there and are indeed recoverable with Amazon. And so we've seen a lot of suppliers and customers go the route of raising individual cases with the Amazon support. And that usually is not the best use of your time. Amazon already sort of had massive layoffs with that really sort of impacted and hurt their customer support. But even before then, Amazon really didn't like having multiple cases regarding the same issue type, in this case, a shortage that's still unpaid, because then that increased the likelihood of having multiple support reps working for issues coming from the same account. So what they do usually is they, every time you introduce a new shortage, they will merge it with a pre-existing one that's on an ongoing case, and that resets the clock to 0. So our recommendation as far as that goes is, instead of doing that, just have a quarterly or or twice a year or every 2 quarters cadence where you just reconcile everything from the past. So everything that's been disputed and still has recoverable dollars. And so we currently help with that process in terms of saving you the pain and the time of getting that data together in the format and structure that Amazon likes, and making sure that that data is in fact accurate, because Amazon will use any reason to delay and deny the process. If, say, you created a spreadsheet and then one of those invoices in there had a smart match reversal, then you're no longer have the most recent deduction dollars and data in there. So our platform allows to keep track of the most recent and up-to-date data, and provides the data and the in the structure and format that Amazon requires. Now we also have the ability to help you create and track and negotiate the case through our app. So it streamlines the process quite a bit. It's even from like a technical standpoint, Amazon makes it pretty difficult. So we try to streamline the process as much as possible and make at least the initiation or creation of that case as easy and as seamless as possible. And then obviously we provide help and support as far as like best practices and even how to negotiate those settlement cases. And Abby, I see you turned on your camera, so maybe a question.
Yes, we had a few questions.
Yep.
First one, can you confirm your understanding that in order to submit a settlement, the original chargeback must have been disputed and you must provide the case ID?
Yes, so in order to, going back to that structure and data that Amazon requires, one of the columns that they need is a dispute ID for each invoice that you raise to them. And you can't have a dispute ID without having gone through that first dispute round. So every deduction that you raise to them will need that corresponding dispute ID. And we've seen cases where people try to skip that part, and usually Amazon just gets back to you and says, hey, you haven't gone through the dispute. Why don't you try that first and see if you can recover your money back? And usually if it's something that's, obviously if it's an optimal shortage or a shortage in the optimal time window, then yeah, you might actually recover. But if it's mature, usually in 1 or 2 days, you'll get a response back with a denial.
Yeah. Thanks, Ash.
Yeah.
Another question, what is the success rate and time frame of recouping funds through the settlement feature that we're seeing so far with testing?
Yeah, so the timelines or the average timeline that we've seen in the past previous to implementing our solution was 5 to 8 months. And that was even prior to the layoffs. But we found out that the reason for that is just suppliers not following Amazon best practices. So the aspect I mentioned earlier of creating new cases while a case is still ongoing, that usually ends up in the resetting of the clock and merging of the cases by Amazon's support team. They really don't want to have multiple support reps working for the same customer or the same supplier account, especially when it's the same issue type. So one way we've helped reduce that is by sharing this best practice and nudging our customers to create a cadence. So like at the end of every quarter, if you have like a high business frequency with Amazon, so like if you get a lot of deductions, then it makes sense to do it that way. Otherwise, if it's more of a small business, then doing it every 6 months or even on an annual basis is fine too. But that also depends on your time value of money. Currently, with our process, we've seen that we've gotten responses, especially when customers followed our best practices and our recommendations, usually in less than 3 months, you would go from case creation to final response. But obviously, that's just an average. So we've seen lower turnarounds, but also higher turnarounds, and those depend on different factors. I would say usually, let's say maybe expect it at least to take 3 months. If not, then maybe 5 months would be pushing it, especially if you're not actually resetting the clock in any way. If it's just Amazon being too slow, then usually I'd say 5 months.
Awesome. Thank you. One more question. Can you explain why they do this? And then it's an invoice number with 5 SCRs on the end. So maybe just a little bit more about the idea behind Amazon's Smart Match process. And
Yeah, absolutely. So let me see if I can use that example. Okay, so I'll just use the first digits of the invoice. So 3198. Let's say that's the invoice that you sent to Amazon. That on the due date of that invoice, or if you have like a payment terms that include a discount for early payments, whenever they decide to pay, to make that initial payment on the invoice, they will confirm a shortage if there's one. Obviously, if no shortage has been detected, you'll just get paid the full amount and case closed. When that's not the case, that 3198 will be paid partially, and then that remaining amount will, if it falls under a shortage claim or a quantity or purchase quantity variance, will result in the creation of 3198 SCR, which is a shortage claim reversal invoice that Amazon sort of puts under a pending status. If they can find those missing cases, they'll pay it back. If not, then it's just your shortage claim invoice. But they link it back to the original invoice you created. I see, Becky, 3198,763. So that first SCR is the original amount that was withheld as a shortage. Now, if a smart match takes place, if it's a full smart match, if they found all of those missing cases, then they'll just pay that first SCR in full, and then that's case closed. You won't have any new SCRs appear. However, in most cases, smart match is only partial. And when I say partial, really, really partial, it's just a tiny bit of that initial amount. Then in that case, really what that creates is, okay, we're going to update the actual shortage amount. So unlike Walmart or other retailers that you're used to, where when they create a shortage amount, it just remains the same. Or in the case of Walmart, if they reverse it, it's a full reversal. There is no partial reversals. That's not the case for Amazon. Amazon will have this passive process where they keep looking for those missing cases. And every time they find a few, they'll wait until the next payment time range and include that reversal as part of the payment. And when that happens, they create 3198,763 SCR, since now we're talking about a brand new shortage that's a little lower than the original one. And then same thing when you dispute and get partially approved, that partially approved amount will be paid on that SCR version of the invoice. And then the remainder that was denied will be the invoice amount of the next SCR. So like 3198,763 SCR. And so when you take all these partial reversals into account, that's why you can end up in, as I said, we've seen the maximum I've seen so far is 16 SCRs. I'm hoping I see something else that breaks that record, but or maybe I'm not hoping to see that for your sake. But yeah, it's just kind of a messy process where Amazon will keep updating to a new shortage claim reversal invoice that accounts for only the latest remaining amount that is recoverable. And that's because they want you to know exactly how much is out there that's still unpaid. That answers your question, but I hope it does.
I think so. Thank you, Ash.
Yep.
Okay, we've got a few more. Every product owner's favorite question: when will the shortage settlement feature be released?
So we have released settlement 1.0, which um, is meant for two use cases. It's meant for users or suppliers that usually create settlement cases with their vendor manager. So they email their vendor manager with Amazon and just have everything run through them. Or for suppliers that would like to keep their negotiation of the settlement private and just have it done through their own vendor central account. So we already released that, I believe, in March. However, this week we are releasing Settlement 2.0, which allows you to basically create the case through our app, follow up on it through our app, and respond, negotiate, and then close the case or reopen the case as need be through our app. So you don't have to really go to Vendor Central for that process anymore. And what that does really is it just makes creating a case. Usually what we've seen is creating a case between data aggregation and the preparation for it can take certain suppliers from 1 to 2 weeks, if not more, depending on the size of your team and the kind of support that you get as far as that data aggregation goes. However, with our tool now in Settlement 2.0, it's literally a matter of minutes or less, even than a minute. You just create the case, you have everything already attached, and it's just about you review everything before you submit. So basically 2 clicks instead of a lot of painful data aggregation and analysis. And obviously, after that, you'll still have to keep track of, did Amazon respond? You'll be able to add your email address to get email notifications on the cases. And so you'll be able to get those notifications and find out whenever Amazon has responded and a case requires a reply from your end. That'll also be part of it. So yeah, all in all, 1.0 already released, 2.0 coming up really soon this week.
Awesome. And Madeline, once that does get fully released, you can work with your customer success manager to help you walk through that process of opening the first case together through SupplyPike.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's all we've got for now. So you're free to keep moving if you're done here, Ash. We did have one more question I just wanted to address. Shawnee, I see your question about Amazon suspensions. We don't currently have a webinar about that. And since it falls kind of outside of the scope of the settlement conversation, let us follow up with you separately about kind of the best next steps there. And I also want to make sure your CSM, Caroline, is looped into that conversation. So we'll follow up with you separately after the webinar. But those are our only other questions, Ash.
All right, awesome. Then yeah, I'll hand it back to you, Abby, if you want to go over the last few slides.
Yeah, sounds good. So just so everyone is aware, we've got some amazing support resources. Like I said, we'll send out a copy of this slide deck so you guys can have this. These links are clickable, so you can check them out. I think several of you have hopefully already interacted with our support team, but just one resource to call out here in particular is this one in the middle. You can chat with our support team right from within the app, and you can also email them. They're great. They're all here locally in Northwest Arkansas, and they'll try to get back with you if you chat them within 15 minutes. So yeah, I would encourage you to use that and check out these other resources we have, like our help center and our supplier wiki. We've got just a huge knowledge base of information. And then finally, please feel free to reach out to me or to Ash if you have any questions for us. These are real emails so that you guys can get a hold of us. And then, of course, there's more information you can check out just at supplypike.com. But thank you to everyone so much for joining, and thank you, Ash, for kind of walking us through this process. And I thought it was some helpful information. So thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.